Okay, great. So today's webinar is really focused on providing you all an overview of what we're going to be doing during our time together, and then just a brief overview of Pearls. So we're planning to be together for an hour and a half. Do let me know if anybody has any time constraints. And part of the reason we're recording is so that you can go back and view these materials at a later time. So today we've got a couple learning objectives. I'm going to describe an overview and the goals of a Pearls trainer training and the requirements for being a trainer and what we would like you to do after you get trained up. And then we're going to describe what an in-person training looks like and how you start a training. So a few caveats or just things that have changed. We used to describe this training as a master training. We have changed the terminology, not to confuse you, but because as a center, we're trying to incorporate more anti-racist practices, and the word master does not have great connotations with it. I understand that many other evidence-based programs use the word master training. I totally respect that. I also know that I have used the word master training for 5 years, so I may say that too. So it's okay, but that's why you'll see the word master training, and we've now shifted to trainer training. The other thing is we designed this training pre-COVID. So we've been doing this trainer training. This is our fourth one. So about 4 years now, actually 5 years, because we paused during COVID. And this is when we were really only doing training in person. So I'm going to be, where appropriate, talking about how we might do things a little differently when we do distance training. And we'll spend some time at the last webinar talking about distance training, but I did just want to set that stage. I anticipate we will do in-person training again. I hope we will, but I also anticipate that you may decide distance training works better for you and your partners going forward. And so that's something that we'll talk about together too. So today, what you'll be learning about is kind of how to give somebody an overview of Pearls, and then also to teach about kind of why we do Pearls. And you all kind of already did that in your introduction, so you set yourself up well. Okay, so let's talk about this training. So our goal is to train people like you, people who have experience being a Pearls coach or a Pearls counselor, to train others to do the Pearls program. So we've broken this up into 90-minute weekly webinars. Here's the schedule here. We may actually switch the suicide clinical supervision one from number 5 to 4 so that my colleague, Dr. Mark Snowden, who many of you have met, can teach and train that day. He's a geriatric psychiatrist that I work very closely with, and if available, he's going to come and train. But basically, this is how we've broken it up. We've tried to break it up, just like problems, into manageable chunks where we talk about all the key pieces you need to teach during a Pearls training. And they're going to be the same time every week, so hopefully our old brains remember, but we also have sent out some calendar reminders too. So at each of the webinar, I'll set some learning objectives. We'll provide an overview. We'll talk a little bit about mechanics and how we do training. Everyone will feature some adult learning principles that I think are helpful for you all to keep in mind as you think about designing and adapting your own training. These are all the building blocks, but I understand that all of you have experience teaching, so please make it better. We will go through a review of each training topic during the training. We will also talk about some frequently asked questions that come up. We'll have opportunities for you to ask questions, and then at the end, we'll do what's called a teach back. So part of how you learn is by doing. And so part of how we learn together is every session, I'll ask 1 or 2 of you to volunteer and practice teaching what you learned today. There'll be pretty specific ways of teaching. I won't ask you to teach the whole 90 minutes, but it's really a great chance for you to put this in your own words, practice doing it in front of a friendly audience, and then for us to learn from you as well. I always love this part because I learn new ways of teaching and doing Pearls training. In terms of the requirements, we'd love you to be here for all the webinars, but we get that you have busy lives, both personally and professionally. So at the very least, we'd love you to be here for 5. It's a small group, so that's why I'd love for you to be here for all, but just let me know in advance if there's a schedule issue. Part of the reason we're recording is understanding in case someone has to miss. We'd also love for you to be involved, ask questions, chat, help each other out. And then in between the webinars, we've got some homework. We try not to make it super cumbersome, but we want to save our live time to go over the key points and to practice. So there'll be some video clips to watch and some materials to review in between the webinars. In terms of after the training, you'll still have access to that LearnLink website. So that's a place you can go and get materials and rewatch videos, kind of whatever you need. Ideally, we would like you to train sooner than later. So just like with Learning Pearls, where we want you to be out in the field doing pearls after the training, we'd love it if you could train. We say 6 months, but the sooner the better. The sooner you train, the more likely it is you're going to be successful. The information will be fresh. You won't have to spend a lot of time reviewing. We also would love it if you did it with another trainer. The reason we would is because that's how you learn. You get feedback from your other trainer. Quite frankly, you get to share the load. It's a lot to do and a lot to cover. And it's really nice to know you've got someone on your back. Cynthia, I know that you are by yourself in Colorado, so we are happy to connect you to other trainers who can help support you. Part of the beauty of distance training is trainers can be anywhere. We just did a pearls training last month, and we had one trainer from New York and one from Florida, and it was easy and it was not a lot of travel and less expensive in time. So we're happy to help connect you as well. When you start training, we're here to support the people you train. So we're happy to invite them to join the TA calls that we do every first Thursday. We'll ask you to share with us who you're training. We don't need lots of information. We just, for our own funding from CDC, need to let them know how many people are getting trained up and where. So we'll share more details about that after the training. The other thing is all these materials are available for you. So you'll notice most of the Pearls materials have a little copyright on the bottom of them, but use them as you best see fit. So clearly keep the Pearls logo on there, keep the copyright if there is a copyright, but if you need to tweak stuff to fit your agency, we understand that. Some agencies ask additional questions. Some agencies use different verbiage to describe different things, and that's okay. So for example, if you want to be a Pearls coach, be a Pearls coach. If you want to be a Pearls counselor, be a Pearls counselor. Like that type of stuff, we're not here to monitor or police, quite frankly. The other thing I want to be clear about is Pearls has never licensed its model. So many evidence-based programs are pretty strict about this. They require you to purchase a license pretty regularly, and they certify you to become a Pearls coach or counselor. We don't do that. We've just decided this is information that was publicly developed with taxpayer research dollars. We want to make it available as we can. We charge for things to cover our time and our ongoing development. And then when people are trained, we provide a certificate. So we ask that you do the same. So when you start training other people, clearly you need to get paid for your time. You need to set up kind of checks and balances for your organization. And just ask us if you have questions about, is it okay for me to do this? Or is it okay for me to do that? We're here to help. Lastly, and most importantly, we are trying to move as much of our training online as we can. And we need trainers to help support the growing Pearls community. So after the training, we will be in touch and we'll ask whether you're interested in being a trainer for our new distance training. What that would mean is committing to a few hours a year to basically do practice sessions with people who are getting trained online. More details to come, but think about that as we start to go through. Sounds like some of you might be busy in Kentucky with 50 students, but we welcome trainers from around the country. So questions about any of that? The training guidelines or about how the webinars are set up? Yep, Cynthia.
I'm sorry. So the master training book, the certificate, I don't have Adobe.
Oh, okay.
I know. I'm running this program on a real shoestring.
Yeah, so Cynthia, you don't need the full Adobe to be able to download those materials. There's a free Adobe Reader that you can download, and that should give you access to all those materials to be able to at least open them. And then we have everything in Word. So if you need to like
the certificate for the trainee, I can't edit it, put their name in it.
I see. Okay. Yeah. So you need to make sure you've got access to everything in Word in addition to Adobe PDF. Got it.
Yeah.
Sure. That is definitely something. We have a Google Drive with everything on it. And if we don't have the certificate on there or the training manual, I'll make sure that they're on there in Word.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. No, we don't expect you to get the fancy, expensive Adobe to be able to do that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah. No sweat. I'm making a parking lot list here of things to do. Okay, great. Anything else?
Leslie, I just wanted to say I was able to finally get in. I'm so sorry for my tardiness. Everyone else on the call, Zoom and I were in a fight and it was winning, but I came out victorious in the end. So I apologize for being late.
No problem. Andrea, do you just want to briefly introduce yourself? Let us know who you are and where you're from and why it is that you're interested in becoming a Pearls trainer.
Sure. So my name is Andrea Deaton. I use she, her pronouns. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and a staff development officer with Riverside University Health System Behavioral Health Prevention and Early Intervention in Southern California. So I work for our behavioral health department, and all of our funding comes from the Mental Health Services Act. So we have public tax dollars that we are also using to provide prevention and early intervention services to 6 underserved cultural populations in our county. And I'm interested in being a Pearls trainer to be able to support my provider that is out here in Riverside covering and providing Pearls to our older adult population. And as they have staff turnover, I am really excited at the opportunity to be able to support them with new staff coming on and their current staff that are already implementing, and being able to provide better technical assistance and better training to them as they continue to implement.
Great, thanks Andrea, and welcome. So it's pretty exciting because we've got California, Colorado, and Kentucky represented, and 3 really different types of organizations. So Dina and Allison work at the Traeger Institute in Kentucky. And so they're like a clinic-based organization providing services to older adults in the community. And then Cynthia is running her own program in Colorado. And there are no other programs in Colorado or Kentucky. So it's really exciting to be expanding to different states and different types of organizations with Pearls. So welcome, Andrea. We've just gotten started just providing an overview of what the training is going to be like, but I'm happy to stay on after if there's any questions or concerns. And we also have been recording as well. I'm glad you were victorious against the Zoom demons. We've all had that experience. So you all by now, actually, Andrea, have you been able to access the website?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So this is your one-stop shop for what you need. Please let us know if anything's not there or confusing. Caitlin and I and our folks at the Northwest Center for Public Health Practice try to do our best, but we know that things fall through the cracks sometimes. But this is where you'll see the material organized. We'll have the slides for every webinar as well as a recording. We'll have materials, we'll have videos. We're gonna ask after every webinar that you do a quick learning assessment. We're required to do that partially, but it also helps me make sure that you're getting the content you need. We'll have where the homework is, and then we'll have some frequently asked questions listed there as well. In terms of resources for you, so the webinars, all these slides today are going to be there. So if you do start doing distance training and you decide that you want to modify some slides, like that's where you'll find it. We also have a trainer manual that we've created. And Andrea, before you joined, I think we were talking about the fact that this Pearls training was really designed thinking about an in-person training. And so we are aware that distance training looks a little bit different, but the manual is really designed thinking about doing 2 days where you're training people in person. We envision going back to that at some point, so that's why we set it up that way. But I just want to point out that kind of discrepancy. And the manual is going to have a couple things. It's going to have a schedule for a training. It'll have all the handouts you need. It'll have what we call trainer notes. So every handout has kind of more deeper information that you as a trainer may want to have handy when you teach. And then I also put the link here for the Google Drive, which is where we're trying to put all this stuff electronically too. Cynthia had pointed out that there are some things in there only in PDF and not Word. So we'll do our best to keep that updated, but do let us know if something's not there. You all have also by now seen the toolkit. That is that 200+ page PDF where we try to throw everything together. That is your how-to manual for providers and agencies. That's something that we reference throughout the training, but we don't necessarily ask you to read every page and teach every page during the training. So really what the training is designed to do is to highlight all the key pieces you need. And then the manual is kind of like your Bible or Quran or some Rosetta Stone that people can go back to with more information about Pearls. I'm a researcher, so we always have to evaluate to make sure that what we're doing is working and make it better. We are constantly trying to make this program work better, and The way we do is by learning from you. So we will have those brief quizzes after every webinar that we'll ask you to take. We're going to be talking about frequently asked questions during each webinar, just to help you kind of learn and anticipate the types of things that are going to come up as you train for pearls. We're going to do a teach back so that I can learn how you guys are doing as trainers and help support you. And then we can also learn from each other and learn how we're making the pearls training our own and using our own experience and wisdom. At the end of the training, we're going to have a longer evaluation. It'll be a knowledge assessment plus an opportunity for you to give feedback on how the training worked and how we can make it better. And then we'll also have a brief self-evaluation too. What skills do you need to work on, and how could we support you in doing those skills? And then after the training, we were talking, Andrew, I'm not sure if you had joined yet, but the value of doing a training with someone for your first training. We strongly recommend it if it works logistically and we can help connect you to other trainers, and your trainer can help you give you feedback on how that first training goes. We also encourage that when you do a training, you ask your trainees to give you feedback. We've got some standard evaluation forms you can use. You may have others at your agency, but that's the best way that you're going to know, how did I do? What do I need to cover differently next time? And how can I support these pearls coaches or counselors going forward? So that's the kind of lay of the land, how we're going to be doing our time together for the next 6 weeks and beyond and in between. But any burning questions, concerns, you can either just speak up. We're a small group, or if you prefer, the chat's always there too. Okay. We will also revisit doing a training before our last session. So it all seems kind of like, wait, I'm not training yet. So more to come. Okay, so the next section is really about, what is the goal of Pearls training and how do you start one? At every slide, there'll be some, this is like your roadmap. So there'll be kind of what trainer notes would I look at when I'm doing this section of the training, and where would I find this in the trainer manual? I don't expect you to have all these materials in front of you. I'd actually prefer that you don't, because if you're reading materials, then you're not engaging with us. But this is where you'll find it when it comes time for you to do a training, or if you want to do any review after today's session. So first, we have a schedule. So this was designed by a fellow trainer of mine, Eddie, and this is your map for what is my 2 days going to look like when I do a Pearls training. This is on the website, so you can look at this, but this basically shows how you break up 2 days of training and what you ideally want to cover during each section. This, if you have 2 trainers, is how you divide the training. And it also kind of tells you, okay, I need to get this handout, or I need to make sure I cover this during this section. Again, this is not set in stone. If you find that, for example, you're training up a bunch of, like out in Kentucky, you're training a bunch of students who are brand new to doing any late life depression, anything, you might need to spend a little bit more time on orienting them to late life depression. On the flip side, if you're training a bunch of experienced counselors, you may be able to kind of breeze through doing a PHQ-9 because they've already spent a lot of time doing that. So know that you have a little bit of flexibility based on who it is that you're training with this schedule. In terms of the adult learning principles for today that I want to make sure we think about is, we've tried to design the training with principles for how you reach people who are getting trained, who already bring a lot of experience into the room. So we've tried to make sure that what we teach is immediately something that they can use, that it's really relevant to what they're doing, whether they're a promotora or a nurse or a licensed clinical social worker. We always so encourage you to think about your environment for training. So I know it feels hard to think about this in a pre-Zoom world, but where are you doing the training in a way that people feel they can really engage? Are you setting up the room in a round circle so people can get to know each other? Is there lots of room to walk around and move? But also some privacy for practicing and not kind of being bombarded by other people's voices. We really encourage you to be as engaging as you can with all this dense material at times. So that's you moving around, that's you using different formats if you're on Zoom, and then just being really respectful. I think part of the challenge with Pearls is that you're often training people with lots of different skill sets and really different experience. And you're both teaching them a very structured protocol while at the same time recognizing that they bring different material and different wisdom to the table. And that can be a little bit of a balancing act at time as a trainer. And then lastly, make that connection right from the start with training. What is a story or an anecdote about the topic you're teaching today that you can bring to the room? I actually find that this is one of the weird silver linings of COVID, is that we've all had a rough year and a half. And so it makes it pretty easy to build that connection right from the start as we think about overwhelming problems in our lives and things just feeling like they're piling up and that we're getting stuck. So this is what we're going to do today at the end of the training. So every webinar, we're going to do a teach back, and I'll ask 2 of you to volunteer. And so I like to let people know what I'm going to ask you to teach. So I'm going to call on 2 of you. I'll ask one of you to set the stage for a training. And I'll ask one of you to describe what Pearls is using that stool metaphor. We're going to cover that today. And you also have done some pre-work while we've talked about this, but it's nice to know what's coming up. So this is what we'll be doing at the end of today's training. Okay. Any questions before we start about how you start off a training? Okay, just checking the time here. Okay, so first, we're going to talk about how you set the stage, how you really open the training. Then we'll talk about how you kind of do welcome and introductions. You want to start the training with a really brief introduction to what Pearls is. And that's where we use 2 metaphors. One is the house and one is a stool. Then you're going to orient someone to the training, and then you're going to get right into a demonstration. So you may all remember this from your own training, that we don't try to talk a lot about Pearls to start. We try to show them what Pearls is at the beginning. And the reason we do that is we think it's actually one of those things that just by seeing it first without learning a lot really helps people then learn the skills. It's quite different from how a lot of therapeutic interactions might be structured. And so without having a lot of preconceived notions or a lot of information thrown at you, we find that this has worked really well as a way to teach people how to do Pearls. So how do you set the stage? We try to put ourselves somewhat in the shoes of the older adults who are living with and perhaps struggling with depression that we're going to be teaching. So we start off the training with meeting our trainees where they are. So what happens when you've got to take 2 days away from work and home and go to a Pearls training? Well, things pile up. You've got to juggle a bunch of stuff. Maybe you're in the training, but you're getting a text from your boss telling you that something's on fire and you got to deal with some staff who just walked out. And it can be pretty overwhelming. You might even experience a mini crisis. You might start to just get, having trouble eating, feeling really low energy, feeling really like fidgety. And what if that didn't stop? What if it wasn't just those 2 days or that day that you had to drive to Riverside and back? But what if the problems weren't solved and they just kept piling up? And it's important to start the training this way because it allows you then to say, well, what if this is what was going on with your clients? And what if an older adult that you're working with, that maybe you're providing diabetes care to at the Traeger Institute, what if this is what they were experiencing? What would you do about it? How would you support them? And so what we're going to do over the next 2 days together is we're going to learn a practical and active way that you can help people reduce that mountain of stress. And this has worked really well for setting the stage with Pearls because I don't know anybody who can't relate to this scenario, but I encourage you to modify this accordingly to the pandemic because this was designed before the pandemic. And I feel like the pandemic has created another metaphor for what it's like to be living with and struggling with depression and having things overwhelming you and piling up and being caught in that cycle of depression. So after you set the stage, it's a great time to get to know each other. Like people are like, oh yeah, well, let's go around the room. It's important to not spend too much time on this. You will eat up like 2 hours of your training if you let it. People will get to know each other over the course of the 2 days, during the breaks, during the practices. But it's great to have just a few moments to go around and have people share their name and their agency and their role and what they hope to learn from the training. We often recommend you have people introduce themselves first. if you introduce yourself first, it kind of sets the stage of like you as expert and them as not expert. And it's better to kind of have them start, because you also can be very strategic in your introduction. So for example, if you're in a room full of a bunch of social workers, you can highlight your social work background or expertise or how much you love social workers. Versus if you're in a room with a bunch of docs, you can highlight your clinical wisdom. So it allows you to be kind of strategic with your introduction in terms of, here's where I'm credible, but also here's where I'm not. Like, this is where I'm going to be relying on you to teach me about your role or the population that you serve. And then we dive right in, and teaching about what is PEARLS. It's really important to define the acronym. I forget to do this sometimes, and my co-trainer reminds me because I'm so used to saying PEARLS. But the acronym really tells you what the program is. It's the program to encourage active and rewarding lives. It's very positive. It's very person-centered. It doesn't say depression anywhere. And so this is an important thing to teach your trainees right from the get-go. We next want to distinguish PEARLS from other programs before we talk about what it is, because a lot of your trainees come into the room with a pretty preconceived notion about what mental health treatment is or what depression care is. And so this is where we often do the metaphor of the house. So the way we often do this, and when I used to train in person, I did old school flip charts. I didn't do any PowerPoint. So you can use that as well. But you can also use a PowerPoint. And we ask people to talk a little bit about, okay, for usual care for depression, it's often done in a clinical setting. And it often requires somebody to come to you. So what are some of the barriers to that? And we just have the room brainstorm a little bit, give some examples. Oh, it's hard to get. Oh, they can't access with their insurance. Oh, there's stigma. And this is important to do at the start of a training because it's going to get people talking and thinking about the barriers that they know about from their own experience. And then after you've kind of drawn those two people sitting in that office, we then draw a house around it. And again, this could be done on a slide, but we were doing this for flip charts for many years. And then that both locates that PEARLS logo of the two people sitting in the home, but it really allows the room to think about what are some of the benefits about seeing clients in the home. And that's when they can talk about things like having eyes and ears on the person's home life, their environment, other people they can connect with. In the trainer notes that you have, this is where if people don't come up with ideas, you can help them come up with ideas too. But I find often this is where people are really quite familiar with some of the challenges of clinical care and can see some of the value of doing a program in a home. This is where you also can start with introducing the fact that PEARLS was really done from the get-go with a more homebound population in the homes. It doesn't mean it has to be done that way, but it's important to make that connection to the evidence because people are often kind of thinking about like, can this really be done that way? Or was this program really designed to be done that way? This is all about improving access to care and removing the barriers to traditional depression care. So after you draw the house, it's then an opportunity to give the trainees a really brief overview of what are the key components of PEARLS. And so this is where when you're training, we would draw that stool and that floor. And this was that brief video that you saw before today's training. And the reason we have this metaphor is it's just an easy way to describe something that may feel or not complex in an easy manner. So we draw the stool and we say that we sometimes use a stool metaphor for PEARLS to describe the key components of the program. Some of you are going to be really concerned with fidelity or quality assurance. This is where I want you to learn what are the key things that know that you're doing PEARLS. So the first leg is problem-solving treatment. During the next 2 days, we're going to teach a way that older adults might approach solving problems. And they may already know how to do this, but depression has kind of put it in the back burner or been a fog. Or honestly, we're often not taught how to do this in a healthy way. So this might be a new opportunity for your older adults to learn a way to approach some problems in their life. The second leg is behavioral activation. So how can we bring in experiences that really protect older adults against depression? So we know from research and practice that doing things that are physical or social can actually function as mood boosters, as antidepressants. So we're going to learn ways that you can teach older adults to plan activities that matter to them to help them feel better. The third leg is similar to behavior activation. It's pleasant event scheduling. So how do we help older adults find things in their lives that are enjoyable? As often when we're depressed, our world closes in and we forget what those things are. We lose interest in them or we just stop doing them. And we're going to flip that on its head and encourage older adults to plan things that are pleasant as a way to boost their mood instead of waiting to feel better and then doing those activities. So those three legs make up the key components of Pearls. What's really important, though, is what that stool sits on, the floor, what we refer to as psychiatric support or clinical supervision more broadly, because it doesn't have to be a psychiatrist. And we'll touch on some of the details of clinical supervision later in the training. But what that floor is you as a Pearls coach or counselor are going to have regular clinical case review to ensure that your clients are improving and have any opportunity to adjust their care as needed over the course of your Pearls sessions. Maybe it's a medication, maybe it's another therapy, but it's an opportunity to support you as a Pearls coach and have a team of people helping to provide care for that older adult. There's three things that you want to highlight about the stool when you're teaching it. One is that clients may choose some pieces of that stool. So a stool, it'll still stand up okay if you've got two legs and that kind of piece under it, but that you always need the floor. It's really important that people have some clinical support when they're doing Pearls, because many older adults that you're going to be serving are living pretty complex lives. And we know from research that Pearls isn't going to work for everybody. So this is your chance to support you and set that client up for success, whether it's Pearls or with some supplemental services. We also really want to stress at this point early on in the training that Pearls is just one way to treat depression. As I said before, it doesn't work for everybody, and it's not the only way. I think it's really important to do that. Sometimes in these trainings, people kind of oversell their evidence-based program because it works so well. And we want to be really candid that the model can work and it can do wonders. You all said this during your introduction, but that it's just one way. The other thing we want to remind trainees when we're teaching them about that stool and that floor is that they don't have to throw out everything they know. So yes, Pearls is very structured. We're going to be teaching a very structured way of addressing problems and planning meaningful activities, but you can build on your existing skills to do Pearls well. Pearls can be one tool in your toolbox that you're using with your clients. So before I talk about the training, questions about how you'd present that, setting the stage for the training, having folks introduce themselves, and then doing that brief introduction of Pearls with the house and the stool metaphor. Sometimes people will start asking you a lot of questions about the weeds during this part. And this is when you just have to gently redirect them and let them know that we've got 2 days together. This is just meant to give you a snapshot for what we're going to be learning. What we're actually going to do next is we're going to watch and see what these skills look like in action. And that's going to help answer some of the questions that are coming up. I also find when I'm doing an in-person training or even a virtual training is having like a parking lot can be really helpful. So having an actual flip chart where you're just jotting down stuff. This is where if you have another trainer, they can be jotting down stuff, or even having like a jot form or a chat box where people can put their questions as they come up. That way trainees feel heard, but you're not getting derailed as a trainer because there's a lot to cover in a very short amount of time. You all, I'm sure, have done other trainings, and so you know that kind of challenge of being responsive and also getting through the content you need to get through. So we've actually started printing this out and having this up when we do in-person trainings. But it's important to, at this point in the training, let people know that it's not going to be a linear training. We bounce back and forth on this all the time because it can be a little confusing that you don't teach Pearls start to finish, that you don't start with recruitment and screening and then go into Pearls. We really start here in the middle with the meat of the Pearls sessions, and then we kind of bookend it with the front and back. The reason we designed it this way is because, quite frankly, we think it's kind of boring to start with recruitment and screening. I mean, recruitment's fun, but screening is like a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of forms. Many people already do some kind of intake as part of their work, and it's just like not very exciting and sexy. Whereas the skills of pearls and like learning this new way of problem solving and seeing pearls in action and then trying it out with a partner, like that's what's going to hook your trainees. So that's why we teach pearls this way. We clearly invite you to adjust as needed given the people you're training. But if, in case you're wondering why the heck did they set it up this way, this is why we did it. And we are very transparent about with our trainees up front, just so that they ideally don't get super confused over the course of the training. There's always a few people who wish it was more linear, but in general, we have found that this has worked as a way to get people excited and then get into the nuts and bolts. In terms of the kind of nuts and bolts and logistics of the training, this is usually where I hold up. I actually don't have, I think I saw Cynthia holding up her workbook. We often print out materials for the training, but I will say in this digital age, oh yeah, she has hers. We actually, for our last training, didn't do any hard copy. We just had it all on the Google Drive, and we just had people pull up stuff and kind of do whatever notes they needed. And it actually worked okay. So it can be done without hard copies. But if you're doing an in-person training, we encourage you to print out the toolkit, print out forms, print out handouts, whatever it is you think is going to help people feel successful. At the very least, having a problem-solving worksheet and a PHQ-9, those can be really helpful for people to actually write if you're in an in-person training. But at this point in the training is when we just remind people about what's sitting in front of them or what's sitting on the Google Drive. We don't start the training with this because we don't want people to be flipping through their forms while we're trying to engage them. But at this point in the training, we've done a little intro, we've done a little stage setting. And before we dive into the demo, we want to let people know where they can find these materials. We let them know that there's a lot. Please don't get overwhelmed. It can be easy to do so, that we're going to be going through all the important forms. We want you to hit the ground running. And then in an in-person training, we sometimes, if we're going to print, we color code materials to make it easier for folks. So this is going to flex a bit depending on whether you're doing a distance or in-person training, but this is not something that you need to sweat at this point. This is going to be something you have to think about when you start planning your training. We're happy to share lessons learned. This is where I've actually really learned a lot from my trainers because they've come up with really cool ways to organize trainings both virtually and in person that work for their population and for their organization. But yes, you'll mention the materials and then you'll quickly go over what the goal of the training is. Just like you do in Pearls, you set the agenda at the start of your Pearls session, you do the same thing with your trainees. So you let them know this is what we're going to do in day one, and then this is what we're going to do in day two. And again, I've set this up in a way, our team has set this up in a way to really try to get the really important stuff first and then have day two be more kind of like other key pieces, but maybe not as exciting. But we encourage you to, as needed, flip stuff around if you're teaching people who have very limited kind of skill set in terms of doing structured treatment, doing mental health with older adults. You might need to do like a working with older adults 101 if it's a population brand new to working with older adults. Like we understand that that might also need to be part of your Pearls training too. So this is all on the website, the agenda. And then we also make sure we do learning objectives, just like I started today's with. So you may need to adjust these as needed based on what you're adding to your training. But these are the key pieces you're going to need. You know, how do you identify folks with depression? How do you assess them? How do you help kind of recognize some of the stressors older adults have? We're going to be talking about that when we talk about depression. Describe the key elements of Pearls, this comprehensive multi-component depression management program. You're going to be teaching people about the evidence base. Some people love that, some people don't, but you got to teach it because it gives it some credibility for certain audiences. And it's going to be a lot of demonstrating and practicing the skills and then doing some how-to in terms of how to implement it. These can be adjusted as needed, but these are the key pieces of a Pearls training. And then lastly, what you do in that first morning is you're going to show what Pearls looks like. So we do this in a couple ways. We do have a few videos. We're actually recording some more demonstrations just to have some more diverse trainers and clients, as well as some more diverse scenarios of the types of problems that people work on during a Pearls session. If you have two trainers, this is a great chance to just do it live. They get to see you in action. They get to see you both be successful and then also inevitably kind of go, oh, wait, I'm going to do this step or something. And so it gets to see you as a human being. And it allows them, I think, to just kind of get excited about getting their feet wet. It's also okay to show a video though. So it's really up to you. And the key thing about the demonstration is that people just get to watch it and think about what's happening differently in the demonstration. So ask them to really pay attention. You know, what did you notice about this? Like, not just the problem solving worksheet, but how were these two people relating to each other? You know, did the client seem engaged? Wow, the client was sure talking a lot more than they normally do at a first session or something like that. We also want people to think about, can they see themselves doing this? Yes, it's the first morning of a 2-day training, but the sooner people think about actually doing this after a training, the more likely they're going to try to make it work or push back on you on why they don't think it's going to work. And it's important to get all that stuff out pretty early, because then you could be very strategically addressing that during the course of your 2-day training. And really being open about what might get in the way of you actually doing this. Again, it's important for people to think about the real world. Trainings can feel sort of artificial because we're like away from our office and we're in a room or we're, you know, having coffee and donuts, whatever. And it's hard to imagine being in a client's house. So the sooner somebody can think about being in someone's house or on the phone, the better. So this is, you all remember these questions or similar types of questions from when you got trained in Pearls. And this is why we ask those questions. So what do folks think? I mean, that is, hold on, close your eyes, you don't get dizzy. I'm going back to the schedule. That is this first morning. So that is really, all that content I just went through is usually an hour. Sometimes it goes a little over, but you know, the demonstration is doing a quick PHQ-9 and then doing a worksheet. It's not spending a ton of time having a really resistant client who is like not at all nailing down a problem. It's having a realistic, you know, person go through a working session, but it's only an hour. How does that sound to folks? Were you surprised that that's only an hour, or do you have any questions or concerns about starting a training off this way?
It does seem like a lot to cover in an hour.
Yeah.
Good thing I talk fast.
Yeah. No, it is. And I think, you know, you can fudge a bit with the demonstration in terms of if people have a lot of reactions to the demonstrations and really want to talk. But I also encourage people to kind of jot down their reactions to the demo if you're running out of time, because when you get to the skill building part and the practice part, you can totally revisit that. There's a little bit of having faith in the process with Pearls training that is a lot like the faith you ask your clients to have in the Pearls process. Sometimes when you go through that first session with Pearls, people are like, there is no way I'm doing this, or this sounds complicated, or whatever. And you kind of have to be that cheerleader. There's an element of that with being a Pearls trainer. You know, it's a lot of content, you got to get through it, and you got to have a little bit of faith. And when you try it out, some of those questions are actually going to be answered for you, or your practice person's going to help answer them for you. But don't worry, we're going to get to it over the course of 2 days, even if we don't get to it right now. What else is coming up as you think about starting a training and doing the demonstration?
You mentioned that with the demo, we could also show a video if, for whatever reason, that's what we would choose to do. Is that accessible to us on the website, or is that something that we need to specifically request from yourself or Caitlin?
It should be on the website, but since I'm checking the website, I will double check, Andrea. But yes, and we will have a few more videos available too in the coming months.
Okay, thank you.
So like one of my favorite videos that I use in training sometimes, there's definitely like some swearing in it, and it's also 2 white guys. And so like, it's not appropriate for certain audiences, even though I think it like so illustrates the skills really well. So we are doing some more videos just to try to be more inclusive, and then also just to be more respectful in terms of people who don't want to see, you know, hear a lot of people swearing. Yeah, it's meant to be a natural kind of situation, but I have gotten some feedback that people don't appreciate that. So, and also just being more diverse in terms of showing clients who are not just white men doing the program. doing and receiving the program. Yeah, participating in the program. We also welcome videos from you. So if you find yourself feeling like, gosh, I need to make this very specific to the reality on the ground in Riverside or in Colorado or in Kentucky, and you find yourself making training videos, yeah, we'd love to see them. People really appreciate the demonstration. And I don't know if you had this experience, but when I got trained, I wanted to go back and see it. Like I liked seeing it live, not knowing anything. But then when I hadn't done pearls for a while and was going back out in the field, I really wanted to watch it again as a way to like refresh my skills. So, so you might get that feedback too, and that'll be available to you there. Yeah. Awesome. Can I ask in terms of how do you all feel about doing the training this way? So sort of just like brief overview, dive in. Have you had any concerns about not doing the training linearly or not doing more teaching before you show the skills?
I don't think so. I had a thought, and I don't know how, maybe you can give me some input on this.
Sure.
I have a lot of students that are shadowing me right now in therapy and shadowing other experiences that I'm having with patients in general in the clinic. And I thought about inviting some of them to shadow Pearl sessions ahead of time before the training. Do you think that would be something that would be appropriate?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, very much, Dina. So a couple of things. I mean, clearly, if some people just can't do it, like for confidentiality, et cetera, other reasons, but if they're already shadowing you, I think that'd be great. I mean, sometimes we have people come to an in-person training who have started doing pearls already because they did the online training and like somebody abruptly left their agency. And so they have some experience coming into the training and they always say that they appreciate that. And I know it feels backwards because you're like, aren't you supposed to get trained first? But let's be real. This is how the world works. There's a lot of turnover. We sometimes don't have that luxury. So I think there's no problem with that. And I think test it out, see what's happening with those students that shadow versus don't shadow. You might find that you're going to have everybody shadow as a way to more effectively train them. Or you might find that it sort of gets in the way with them learning different things, or that certain students benefit from shadowing and others don't. So yeah, we'd love to hear how that's going for you. That can also work after the training. Some people do shadowing after the training too, as a way to kind of see the skills in action. Yeah, great. Awesome. Well, I'm just going to do a quick summary of today and then we're going to practice. So I have to go back to, sorry, cover your eyes. If anyone knows a better way to do that, I'd love to know. Okay, so today we just kind of got a lay of the land. So what's the training about? What is an in-person training about? And we did kind of a quick overview of pearls with the house and the stool and talked a little bit, about the process. So we have created a list of frequently asked questions that come up during the training. So I want to review a few of those together now. One of the things we often get when describing the pearls in the house is people will say something like, I don't feel comfortable going into people's homes. Like, I don't want to do pearls in the home. So how might one of you answer that? If someone just like immediately jumps down your throat about why it is that this is never going to work in somebody's homes, how might you address that if the trainee said that?
I'd probably tell them an example of how it really worked well in the home, and some of this stuff I learned from being there. I would not have learned having the person come into the office.
Mm-hmm. So kind of emphasize the value of it.
Yes.
Yeah, nice. And thanks. Anything else?
It's not necessary, it's not the only way, but personally, I really like it.
Yeah, and that's good. So meeting them a bit where they are, that it doesn't have to be done this way if this is something you really can't or are not comfortable do, but that it's really been valuable in terms of getting a sense of where they are and who they are. Yeah, nice. Other things people might say?
I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I think in addition to what she was saying, I would also check in with them to see if maybe they have a particular concern about doing something in the home, because kind of thinking about our students, but when also I started working, because I would go to people's houses at first, they maybe are looking for protocols or something like that, like safety things to follow, that they maybe it's a new experience for them.
Mhm.
And so maybe checking in if there's specific things that they're concerned about. Because in my experience, a lot of those things are things that can be worked out. So maybe if they're coming from a certain place that could be addressed, or you can have an example for to show them how that could work.
Great. Yeah. Nice, Allison. I think that's right. Kind of, if their concerns are a safety concern, it's probably a different way of addressing it than a concern about, maybe the clients they work with may not be comfortable having you in their home because of hoarding or other things that they're sort of embarrassed or ashamed about. So that's right. There are kind of different ways to address different concerns. Was there something else, Dina or Andrea, that you were going to add?
I was pretty much going to say what Allison said, was kind of like acknowledging that they have that concern, because in field-based work might be new to them, particularly thinking about the population of Pearls counselors that I work with. This might be their first kind of job in the field, both in the field of psychology, social work, and actually out in the field. And so that comes with it lots of anxiety and questions and concerns around safety, but also, how does this work? Like, so kind of a combination of what Allison and Cynthia said regarding kind of answering those questions and meeting those needs that way.
Yep. Yeah, great. And you all raised a good point, which is that, you're not going to be training a group necessarily of eager beavers, right? Some people are told by their supervisor that this is what we're doing. We just got a grant and you're now going to be a Pearls coach. And so they may not see the value or want to be out in people's homes. And so, whether we like it or not, as Pearls trainers, we do have to sometimes sort of champion that and why it is useful to do and potentially beneficial, and how it is to make you feel as comfortable as you can, given that this is your job and this is what you're being asked to do. So it's not something we talk a lot about in depth in the training, but these are some of like the other pieces that'll come up as a way to make Pearls work. I would say when we are teaching the piece about the Pearls stool, we often get asked, even though I went through it after teaching the stool, that you can do other things, you can bring your experience. We often kind of get some pushback from experienced clinicians who really feel that kind of they know best. So for example, we might hear something like, oh yeah, I know about problem solving treatment and behavior activation, but I think it's kind of limiting that I can't do other types of therapy with somebody if they're really, like, for example, struggling with some past trauma or have some family issue that's really getting in the way of them doing the work. So can I add legs to the stool? How might you answer that question? And remember, there's really no right or wrong answers here.
I think I would go back really to what the purpose of the Pearls program is, that it's really about working with an older adult and their feelings of depression, and that it's not really a program that's meant to treat trauma history or whatever leg of the stool they're wanting to add, but really refocus them on the purpose of the program. And that while all of those other things are important, and yes, that person, that client might need those things, this is one tool we're giving them. And it's also one tool we have as a clinician to help someone with that specific problem of depression.
Is that also a time where it would be helpful to maybe, like you mentioned before, kind of alluding to the fact that there's more to come, and you could talk a little bit about in the future, we're going to talk about the screening process and finding folks that it's an appropriate intervention with to start with?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I like both those ideas, kind of Pearls is not a panacea, right, for everything. It was very specifically designed to address depression, and it was very specifically designed to address depression from people who don't usually access other mental health care. So it is not narrow, but it's a little bit different. And I think that's right, Dina, that the screening process does help identify people for whom pearls might be a good fit, and ideally identify people that it won't be a good fit for. But there are strategies for if somebody gets in and clearly would benefit from additional trauma, focused care or other kind of more in-depth therapy around some family issues, that is something they could kind of do in addition to or after the program. Yeah, great. So we have a living document on the website of common questions that come up. It's not exhaustive. I cannot predict your trainees and what they'll ask, but I found that when I was learning to be a Pearls trainer, it was kind of just nice to know, like, okay, these are some of the things that might come up. We are always here as a resource too. You all have different Pearls expertise, different Pearls wisdom, but at any point in your training journey, if you feel like, gosh, this would be a helpful thing to bring to the team at the University of Washington, we welcome it. This is how we make the program better and how we make the training better. If we start hearing the same questions over and over, we actually start building them into the training to better anticipate it. Okay, so before we go into the teach back, any questions, concerns that have come up about all the materials that we covered today? Okay, all right, well, so let's practice. So not asking you to do a 90-minute or hour session, but would like one of you to volunteer and teach that setting the stage for a 2-day in-person training. So that slide where we talked about kind of right when you walk in the room and open the training, and really kind of emphasizing what it's like to be at a 2-day training and have problems pile up. And then the other person, I'd like to describe what Pearls is using the stool as a metaphor. You can pull up a slide if you want. You could make it your own words. It's really up to you. But I'll pause and see who would like to volunteer. And then you can spend a minute or so just kind of getting ready for teaching us. You'll all get a chance to do this. So if not today, we will have teach backs every day. And we're a small group, so you'll get a lot of practice.
I'll do the stool.
Okay, great. Thanks, Cynthia.
Let me go get a thing.
Yeah, no sweat. Would anyone like to set the stage?
I'm doing that thing in training I always get frustrated with my trainees about. Like if I don't look at her, she can't see me kind of a thing. I'll give it a shot.
Thanks. I had the person I first co-trained with, Eddie, he used to say, I have the patience of Job. And he would just like sit in the front like this with like this stern face on. And eventually it would make somebody so uncomfortable. They'd be like, okay, I'll do it. Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'll let you just spend a minute if needed to just prepare what you want to say, and then you can just jump in to set the stage. And then we'll pause, and the group can all give you feedback, and then we'll move on to the stool metaphor. We got plenty of time, so we're good.
Leslie, is there a place where like these specific slides already are? Or is it just like this video after we?
Yeah. So these slides, hold on, let me stop share here.
And you may have told us, but I
told
may
you a
have
bunch of
missed it.
stuff though. There's no way. They should be, I believe, and if not, I will just send them to you all right now. But I believe they're on the LearnLink website. And so let me put that in the chat. And then I'll make sure they're actually there. Yeah, so let me just log on to mine and then see. Oh, my session is timed out. Hold on. I'll also just go ahead and email them to you so you have them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was blanking on the introducing the
Oh,
Pearl
yeah,
session thing.
No problem. So let's see, they are, if you, I don't see them, so I'm going to send them to you. Yeah, apologies. They're usually right at the, oh no, there they are, module 1. Okay, so I'm going to send them to you too, but if basically when you log in, all of you, when you log into Pearls Learn Link and you open up the page for the Pearls Trainer training, there'll be, here, I can actually just share my screen. Brilliant, I love it. Okay. So I'm in the Pearls Trainer training right now, and then I click on module 1, and then all the way at the bottom, it will say webinar recording and slides. So this is where Caitlin or I will post the link for today's recording, and then the slides should be here. Yeah,
They're there.
perfect. Yeah, and then so the setting the stage one is like
17.
17. There you go. Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no sweat. And these slides, like I said, in the in-person training, we used to just do everything on flip charts. We were like totally analog, but these slides, you're welcome to use these in an in-person training. I'm not against PowerPoint at trainings. I just am used to an analog way of living in the universe, but feel free. These slides are not just a tool to teach you to be trainers and for you to use as like your cheat sheet or your outline. If you find this is a way you want to teach, we actually use similar types of slides in our distance training. So I want to make sure I call that out too. Okay, great. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you.
them.
Are these slides for the trainer training program or to train the trainees?
Yeah, so Cynthia, they were designed just for the trainer training, but a year and a half ago, we moved training to Zoom. And so we actually use a bunch of these slides for our distance training. So one of the things I think Caitlin and I and my team here will talk about is how we can share all the distance training materials with you, because they're very similar. Cynthia was trained actually on Zoom, so she'll know this. And Dina and Allison were actually our distance training guinea pigs. So many of you have been trained on Zoom and will find this material familiar. So yeah, we can put the slide sets. They're very similar, but some of them are customized a little bit more for a trainee audience than a trainer audience. And yes, you're welcome to, no sense to reinvent PowerPoint. Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing those so we can all see each other. And then, yeah, ready to set the stage.
Okay. So we're going to be spending the next 2 days together and thinking about getting here and preparing to spend the next 2 days learning about Pearls. What kind of stuff happens? What things are we having to do? It takes a lot of preparation. We might be worrying and thinking about all of the things building up on our desk at work. How are we going to manage getting our families to the activities that they need to do? All of these responsibilities that we have to juggle, they don't stop while we're here in this space together. So we recognize that's a reality for each other while we're here sharing space together. We might even have many crises that come up that we're trying to manage and deal with at the same time, again, that we're trying to focus on the material and be present while we're here learning together. But what happens if that doesn't stop when the training ends and you go back to life as normal? That crisis is still there. Those deadlines, those things we're worrying about, they're still with us. They're still nagging at us. And they just keep getting larger and bigger, and our problem doesn't get solved by kind of ruminating with it. This is probably very similar to what the older adults, the folks that we're working with, are dealing with day in and day out. That at the end of that day, that problem is still there and they haven't really figured out a way to work on it and to solve it. And that's what we're coming in to help them with. Our role over these next 2 days, at the end of this, is that you'll have some practical knowledge, some practical tools that you can share with your older adults that you're working with about how to reduce those stressors that are causing them all of this anxiety, stress, and worry and depression. That they'll really have some concrete tools that they can do to help solve those problems and help, reduce those symptoms of depression and whatever other stressors might come their way. Okay, I'm done now.
Awesome, Andrea. Yeah. And also, I don't know if you all noticed, but that was like a minute.
I talk really fast all the time, so please
No,
tell
no,
me
no,
to slow
that's
down.
okay. I
Kidding.
think we're all fast talkers as trainers, but just to highlight that you covered a lot in a short amount of time. I think that's an important thing. Yeah, really nicely done. You hit all the points, but you made it your own. I really liked, I also liked how you kind of added at the beginning, you weren't just setting the stage in terms of having people think of how overwhelming it is to be at a training and, all the work pile up and then make the connection with an older adult living with lots of problems. But you said something like, and I recognize that reality. So you also just like made space for the fact that like, yeah, well, we're excited to learn together. Like, I get it. It's stressful to try to be at a training and have your job. So I liked how you, especially now during the pandemic, I appreciated that you kind of acknowledged that space for people that like, we get it. Really
Thank you.
nice. Do folks have other feedback for Andrea? Or questions about how to do that?
Will you teach a class with me? And
I would love to.
nice job. Nice.
Yeah.
You.
Yeah. And one thing I realize, I'm always learning, that we don't explicitly say in the stage setting, is it's very focused on the problem solving and not so much on the activity planning, but you could add, something like that not only are these things piling up and feeling overwhelmed because I'm not able to attend to but I'm also like not doing anything for me.
Right.
I'm didn't have a time to go for a walk this morning because I had to, I was in a hotel room answering emails that I knew would pile up or, and so I think that's another piece you could add. And I'm surprised I'm just now thinking about this after all this years of teaching this, but yeah, don't have to, but yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Maybe it's because I am recognizing that I really am not going for walks in the morning before Zoom. Yeah, nice. Great.
Physical activity is good for depression.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Awesome. All right. So Cynthia, why don't you teach us about pearls using the stool metaphor?
All right, well, if you look carefully, I'll have to get a three-legged.
Oh, look at you. You got a stool.
I do, but it's four-legged. It's four-legged. So we're going to pretend for all of us
Okay.
it's a three-legged stool. And we have, I want to share with you the process of what Pearls is about for me. And what it is a three-legged stool that sits on a support, the floor. So the first leg, we'll take this one. The first leg is about the PST, all right, problem solving treatment. Thank you, I had to think of that.
Mhm.
Problem solving treatment. And what that is it's a 7-step part of our program. We're going to go into that in more detail through the class, but for right now, it's teaching the person we're helping skills so they can move on and maybe move away from their depression. The second leg is behavioral activation. I love that. It's the experiences of life that keep us from enjoying our activities, those things that are necessary to, I guess, keep depression at bay. Such as exercise, having social time with friends, being with people that we love. And then there's the pleasant activities. That's the third leg. The third leg is that as we experience depression, sometimes we let go of pleasant activities. We forget to do our pleasant activities. They become too hard for us to do. These things that I call it the couch gluing effect, where we can't get off the couch to do the things we even enjoy. And then the fourth one is our support. We get support from our psychiatrist or our psychologist. In my case, I use a psychologist and a nurse practitioner, where they offer feedback so that we do offer good support. They give us good ideas. When we share medication information about the clients with them, they can tell us, like my nurse practitioner told me the other day, my client is on 3 different antidepressants. Why are they like that? And I can go back to the client and share that with them. So that's what our 3-legged stool is all about in the nutshell. And we're going to go into that in more detail through the course of the class. Okay, I'm done. Say something, someone. All right, good.
I love that you actually had a stool. I don't think anyone's ever done that. That's amazing.
I have a ton of them. All my plants sit on them.
Oh, nice. So really nice, Cynthia. I really liked some of the language you used to make it your own, describing activities as ways to keep depression at bay, and not necessarily using the word social, but saying the value of being with people and connecting with people you love. I think all those words really resonate with people. I also really liked how you illustrated what clinical supervision is with your model. I think anything that personalizes it and shows your experience are going to help people retain information better. So that was really nice. That very specific example of the antidepressants.
I tend to teach by story.
Yeah, exactly. Like we were talking about earlier, stories are what stick. Yeah. And the challenge is, you have a lot of stories now that you've been doing pearls for a little while. And so the challenge is using those stories without not having enough time to cover the agenda. So I feel like that is like the dance of being a good trainer. It's like getting rich enough and deep enough while also making sure you've got enough time to hit all those high points. So, but I do think that stories, it also gives you credibility, as a pearls trainer, in terms of like, she's been in the weeds and she's done this and had some success with her clients. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So one thing I should highlight with the problem solving treatment, and yeah, definitely use problem solving treatment. You can then call it PST, but some people call it problem solving therapy. I don't have a strong feeling about that. Neither word is great though, because therapy and treatment are both kind of stigmatizing. So, but when you're teaching that and when you're mentioning the stool, I should say, I think it says something like in the slide that it is a process to approach solving problems. One of the things we want to be emphasizing throughout the training and throughout Pearls is that Pearls is not going to help people solve all their problems. And I think that's part of the problem with the name problem solving treatment, is because one would think that that's what it does. But in fact, it's just in the teaching people tools to help them start to address some problems that they can feel less depressed, because they feel more self-efficacy, more control, less chaos, even acceptance about the things that they cannot change in their life. And I think that's a nuance that when I was first learning Pearls, I don't think I really appreciated. And the more you can do that as a trainer throughout, the more you're going to help people both become better Pearls coaches, but also kind of set more realistic goals about what Pearls can and can't do. Yeah. And I realize it just says the word process on the slide, and that doesn't really tell you that too much. So yeah, nice job about the stool. And then I would say the other thing to remind everybody is, once you've introduced it, reminding people about the value of that clinical supervision. We have to do that all the time because people are going to push back on you on that one. And then just a reminder about Pearls being one tool, and that there's other tools, and that you don't have to sort of, in today's training, feel like you can't bring that other wisdom, but that in some cases it'll be more appropriate, to bring that later or in other settings. So it's a little nuance at the beginning, but sometimes people will immediately raise their hand and be like, I'm going to push back. And other times you'll kind of more gently talk about that over the course of the training. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. So excited. I love training. So question, Cynthia?
Anybody else? Come on, you guys are all doctoral level.
Do you guys have any feedback for Cynthia?
I was definitely thinking that Allison and I are going to have to definitely locate a 3-legged stool for sure, because I think having the visual of the actual stool was really great. I love that you had that.
Mm-hmm.
And I also really liked the way that you described the pleasant experiences. I thought that was nice, the way you described that. Yeah.
Thank you.
And also, I will say to Leslie's point about the problem solving treatment being a process, I have learned that in my evolution of doing pearls with people that I've gotten a lot better at explaining that to clients, what that is like. So I think having gone through that enough times to kind of develop a way of presenting that to clients will be beneficial when I'm presenting it as a trainer, just a way to kind of, that nuance is, I think, is important actually. Yeah.
I think so too, because I think otherwise it sets up this just kind of unrealistic expectation about what the program can do. And, you know, especially because you don't just want the client to respond, you want the coach or the counselor too, to kind of want to do it and feel like it's going to be effective. So I think that's right. It took me some time to get that too. And the sooner we teach that, the better.
I often will say to clients now that it's like teaching them a new way to approach their problems instead of focusing on the solution almost as much.
Yeah. Oh
them
gosh. Maybe
reframe
we
it.
should, call it problem. Yeah. Problem approaching treatment doesn't work, but that's exactly it. The word solving is, I guess it's a ver or ing, but still nice. An approach to it. Yeah. To problems. Great. Awesome. Great work, everybody. It's 90 minutes has flown by fast. So I just want to let you know quickly what's ahead for next time. So I'll just pull this up because it's a lot of information. Yeah, okay. So next week, we're going to talk about what comes next in the training. So we've designed these webinars to be the order of the training, so you can kind of mimic how it feels. We're going to talk about the research or the evidence, and we're going to talk about a little bit about an overview of late life depression. We spend the training next on those pieces because it sort of helps ground kind of that Pearls works and also ground people in the reality of their clients living with depression. We do that before we go into the skill building. So before next week, if you could just take a brief quiz about today, we'll be sure to post the recording if you want it there. There's a quick video to watch. We want you to just look at a few pages of a toolkit. And then there's some articles there on Pearls research. You do not have to read them in depth. Just take a look at them and imagine teaching this and knowing enough to teach it. I'm going to give you some pointers next week. But they can be, journal articles. They can be kind of dense. So don't feel like I'm not going to quiz you on the nuts and bolts. So yeah, take a look at those materials. Do let me or Caitlin know if there's any questions or concerns before next Thursday. Otherwise, same Zoom link, same time. We'll gather again. Anything else before we sign off for today, or you get back to your next Zoom?
I have to ask real quickly, where are you in Colorado? Because for the third week, I will be visiting. Two of my kids are in college in Colorado. One's in Boulder and one's in Fort Collins. Or do you happen to be in either of those cities?
No, I'm down in southern Colorado in Colorado Springs.
Okay. I've been there too before, but I won't be for this trip.
Oh, that's so fun.
Bummer.
You can spread the Pearls gospel in Boulder and Fort Collins and let them know that there's somebody getting trained up to do Pearls around Colorado. Nice. Anything else?
I think that I did a presentation the other day, I think I told you, for some of the area agency on aging.
Oh yeah.
So hopefully some of them will be interested in the Pearls program.
Great. Yeah, great. Well, Dina, you are illustrating the value of Zoom training, which is that you can go visit your kids and still get trained. So yeah.
I quickly discovered that parent visits in college are mostly just take me out to dinner and don't bother me the rest of the time.
Pretty much. Pretty much. Yep. Hey, you get to go to beautiful places though.
I'm not complaining. I enjoy it. It's like a little vacation by myself, which is my favorite. So
oh my gosh, that sounds awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I look forward to learning with you all next week. Great work, everybody. Good to see you. And thanks. Take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.